It's possible that we have seen the final ever Shaw Classic. That's right, Brian Shaw has came out and said that the Shaw Classic, the strongest man on earth, it may not return for 2026. There is a chance that we will not see it again. A small chance, I must say, but there's a chance. Before I go into my thoughts and what I think will happen, give my opinion on what he said, let's talk about what he actually said. So I'm just going to talk about the strongman competition itself. I'm not going to go into the expo, the arm wrestling, the powerlifting and all of that stuff, but he essentially said that this year the sponsors were down, the ticket sales were down, and the pay-per-view sales were down as well. So the price that he had to pay and his team had to pay was a lot higher, and the prize fund that they were able to give out to the athletes was a lot lower than previous years. Now, Brian has built this show from the ground up. He's put all of his own money into it, all of his own time and energy into it. Obviously, sponsors have come on along the way, but it's still a lot of his own expenses that he puts into the show to make sure it all runs well. And I remember watching it this year, and he said himself that it was a great competition, that the Strongman show itself was probably one of the best shows that there has ever been or has been for a very long time. And I agree with him. It was so close right up until the final event. It was chopping and changing the whole time, and it was very interesting to sit and watch. But I did notice myself when I was watching it that there seemed to be quite a lot of empty seats, and I don't know if that's due to the price of the tickets, if people just couldn't make it this year. I don't really know why there were so many empty seats. I do have some sort of an opinion as to why it was, and that is the fact that the three biggest names that could have been at the show weren't at the show. That being Mitchell Hooper, the reigning defending champion, Hathor Bjornsson, who came second the year before and is just a big name anywhere he goes, and then Reino now, who is, of course, the current world's strongest man. And now, I know some people don't agree with Reino now being a big name in the strongman scene, and I understand it. He's not been at the top and done it at the major shows for long enough to maybe be considered in the same conversation as Thor and Mitch. But if you're the world's strongest man and you go to a show, I've said this many times in previous videos, you're still a draw. You're still going to bring more people to that competition, if not to see the world's strongest man, to see how you get on as an athlete at this different show with different events against different competitors. And I definitely think that had a bearing on the amount of people that attended, the amount of people that bought the pay-per-view, because you've not got necessarily the top three guys in the world at your show, which is for the strongest man on earth. And of course, it's a big expense for people to make. I, for one, want to go and watch the Shaw Classic. I want to go and see it in person. Would I have chose this year to go and see it? No, I wouldn't. And if I had chose this year, if I'd bought the tickets, booked the hotel, the plane tickets, obviously I'm in the mighty England, so I'd have had to fly over to America. If I had booked it for this year, yes, the show was great. Yes, I would have had a great time, really enjoyed it. But it wouldn't quite be the same as being able to witness it if Thor was there, if Mitch was there, if Reino was there. That would be, in my opinion, that would have been a better show to watch. And that's not taking anything away from the guys that were there. I think Evan Singleton put on an amazing performance, Lucas Hatton, Trey Mitchell, Austin Andrade, Bryce Johnson, Thomas Evans, everybody put on great performances throughout, from the top of the pack right through to the bottom of the pack. I was impressed by everybody. But if you don't have the top athletes at your show, if you don't have the reigning defending champion, if you don't have the previous world's strongest man, the deadlift world record holder, the biggest name probably in strongman right now in Hathor Bjornsson, you don't have the current world's strongest man at your show, it's not as much of a draw. Because if you're paying, I don't know how much the tickets are, but let's just say you're paying £300, whatever, for a ticket to see the top guys, you don't quite feel like you're getting your money's worth when you're paying that same price, but not getting to see the best athletes, because those athletes are irreplaceable. They're not just going to be in the mid-pack. And again, that's not saying anything about any athlete that was in the mid-pack, because they are still elite level athletes. It's just saying that it's not quite the same. If you went to watch a 100-meter race back in 2008 and Usain Bolt wasn't there, you'd be like, yeah, it was a great race, it was really close, but they didn't have Usain Bolt there. So it's not quite the same, is it? Now, do I think that we will see the Shore Classic Strongest Man on Earth again? Do I think we will see it next year? Yes, I do. I remember last year when Brian put out his videos, his thoughts and feelings and everything about the show, he said the same thing. And if anything, he sounded more depressed, for want of a better word. He sounded more depressed and more sort of let down by the show after last year's show than he did this year. Do you know what I think it is? It's you've reached the top of the mountain. All the hard work has been done. You've completed what you set out to do, and then you come down from it. You hear about it with Olympic athletes all the time. You hear about it with people in strongman when they win a major title. Eddie Hall says it a lot of the time. He wins World's Strongest Man. He's on such a high, and then the next week he's changing dirty nappies again, essentially. And I feel like that's potentially what hits Brian, and it has for the past 2 years. And give it a few months, 3 to 6 months time, he'll be fired up and ready to improve the show and make it better than last time, because he's not a quitter. We've seen it throughout his strongman career. I don't think he's ever pulled out of a show, if I'm not mistaken. He's not a quitter. He's not just going to give up on it. And I know he said that he's sacrificing time with his wife and time with his kids, and it's a lot of money, and if it financially doesn't make sense, then he can't continue it. But the sort of guy that he is, I believe he will be trying to find every way possible to continue the show and to make it happen, to make it the best show in the world. Because I already know a lot of you watching consider the Strongest Man on Earth to be the #1 title. It's got the most amount of athletes throughout the entire show, and it's got the most amount of events throughout the entire show, with all of the athletes taking part. Of course, you can say the World's Strongest Man has more events, has more athletes, but it's still a 5-event final with only 10 people in it, as opposed to the Shore Classic Strongest Man on Earth, which is 16 athletes from start to finish with 8 events. Every single person does every single event. Now, what do I think would improve the Shore Classic? It's difficult because for Brian, he obviously wants to make the heaviest, hardest show possible, but I do think that maybe he's a little bit stubborn in that regard. He is looking at it from a perspective of, we're going to find who is the strongest man, and if you manage to come out the other end without being destroyed, then you're the strongest man. But what he doesn't seem to take into consideration is that these guys have other competitions that they want to do. They have a career, that they want longevity in their career. They want to continue on for a few more years. And if you're putting on events that are brutally heavy, that every single time people get injured, and people get injured at every strongman show, but with this one, it's like a 100% guarantee that at least 2 or 3 people will come out with an injury, if not a serious injury. And some people don't want to take that risk, which is completely understandable. You look at the likes of Luke Richardson and Mateusz Kieliszkowski, who have had so many injuries between them. If they get back to fitness, to proper shape, would they take the risk of competing at this show when they know the chance of injury is so much higher than at the other shows, which can pay the same amount of money and they might have a better chance of winning? So I think that's one thing that he needs to address, is the fact that 8 events is absolutely fine. Making certain events very heavy is absolutely fine, but you've got to give these guys the ability to have a bit of a rest, the ability to be able to train for the events so that they don't get injured by the end of it. Because the training itself, I'm not a professional strongman coach, but to try and train for 8 brutally heavy events where most of them are max effort, to run that into a training cycle, a training block, is incredibly difficult to do. The amount of prep that you need to do just to get your body in shape to where you don't tear anything, you don't rip your tendons apart, it takes a long, long time. And that's one of the reasons that Rain O'Neill didn't do it, because he didn't feel like he had the time to prep for it. And some people might say that he should have done it, being the world's strongest man. He's got to back it up. But I actually applaud him for saying, you know what? I want to stay in this sport for a long time. This is a really difficult event, and I want to be in my best condition possible when I come to do the show. Something else that I've said previously in other videos as well is, if he brought this show to the UK, he would have 100% sell out probably a bigger arena than he has in the United States. And he might disagree with that, I know he's all about America, and that's fair enough. Patriotic, I get it, I like it. And it's an American show with a lot of American athletes, to tell you the truth. But bring this show to the UK, put it in an arena, you are going to sell out. 100%, no doubt about it. You will sell out. I do wonder if that's why the Rogue Invitational have brought the Rogue Invitational, the CrossFit and the Strongman over to Aberdeen. I don't know, maybe it's cheaper there, but they will pretty much sell out every single time. And I don't think they would have done in America. So I'm not saying the American fans aren't as big as the UK fans, but I'm saying the UK is a smaller place with a higher concentration of strongman fans in it. And if the Shore Classic was in the UK this year, I'd have gone. If it was in the UK the year before, I'd have gone. If it's in the UK next year, I am going 100%. But if you're an American and you've got to make a long journey, you might not go, because you've got the World's Strongest Man there as well. You've got the Arnolds there as well. You might choose to go to one of those instead because it's slightly closer, but you bring that show over to the UK, 100% it's getting sold out. Definitely. Americans might disagree with me in the comments, and like I say, I'm not saying you're not as good fans as the British fans, the UK fans. I'm not saying that in the slightest. I'm just saying you look at Giants Live and there's pretty much never an empty seat in the house. Maybe there is a little bit, but compare it to what there was at the Shore Classic, which is a major title. Comparing that to a Giants Live, which is just, another strongman competition, there's probably more people going to watch the Giants Live. And yes, it's cheaper. Yes, there's all of this and all of that. Bring the show over to here and you're going to sell it out. Another thing that I would say is potentially set the price fund. Now, I understand that it might be easier to change it on the fly, given the fact that if you don't make as much money, you pay them less money. But if you were to set it out as, first place is going to get X amount, second X amount, then everybody knows where they are at with it, and you know exactly how much you have to get through the door in order to pay this out. And he wants to give as much money back to the athletes as possible. And, I understand that, and I get why he's doing that. I think it's a great thing to do, to be able to give these athletes a big payday. But from a financial point of view, if you know what you're going to have to spend, then it might just make it a little bit easier to work out the numbers beforehand. And look, I'm not trying to give advice to Brian Shaw. I'm sure Brian knows what he's doing better than I do. I'm just saying that from an outside perspective, there's a few things that maybe don't make the most amount of sense and could maybe change in order for it to be less stressful on him and not as much of a financial blow at the end of it, because that's what it seems to be every single year at the moment, is that it comes to the end and he's like, that's cost me too much money, which is fair enough. Like, sure, he has a lot of money, but still cost him too much money. And you can't blame him for saying, can I continue to do this year in, year out when I'm not making anything from it? But he's set the stall out in that regard to the idea of, I don't really want to make anything off this. I just want to pay the athletes and for all the strongman people to have a great time, which is wonderful. But that's not how a business works. If he wants it to work as a business, he needs to look at it and say, okay, this is our cut for what we're putting into it, and this is the athlete's cut for what they're essentially putting into it. But again, it's his decision, it's his show. I'm just spitballing ideas here in case Brian Shaw decides to watch my channel. If you are watching, Brian, just subscribe, please. That'd be nice. That'd be great. Give me a shout out as well. I'd really appreciate that. Final thoughts then. I don't want the Shore Classic to go anywhere. I don't want the Strongest Man on Earth to go anywhere, because it is probably my favorite show of the calendar. It's the one I get most excited for. It's the one that I consider to be the best world title. If you're considering the World's Strongest Man as a world title and the Strongest Man on Earth as a world title, I think the Strongest Man on Earth is the better world title out of the two. It might not hold quite as much weight in terms of the name of it, but in terms of the actual strongman competition itself, I think you have to be the best guy there. You can't get lucky and win the Strongest Man on Earth, whereas you can get slightly lucky and win the World's Strongest Man, depending on the events and in groups and whatever. So the Strongest Man on Earth hopefully doesn't go anywhere. Hopefully returns to 2026. I believe it will. And, yeah, get your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next one.